A 14-year-old girl walks into a local bank with just $90 in hand, money she earned and saved with care. But instead of being welcomed, she's met with suspicion, side eyes, and silence. What begins as a simple deposit turns into something much bigger when the adults behind the counter make assumptions they can't take back. They question the wrong kid. And they definitely weren't ready for the woman who showed up next. This story hits hard, not just because of what happened, but because of how familiar it feels to so many. If you've ever been underestimated, misjudged, or treated like you didn't belong, this one's for you. Watch until the end. The quietest voices often carry the loudest truth. What happens when a 14-year-old black girl walks into a bank alone? And they assume she's a criminal. You ever notice how grown-ups look at kids like they've already decided who they are? Like your age, your clothes, even the way you walk into a room tells them all they need to know. That's exactly what happened to 14-year-old Jasmine Carter on a regular Thursday afternoon in downtown Columbus, Ohio. It was warm outside, early spring. The kind of day where the sun's not too harsh but enough to make you squint a little. Jasmine had just gotten out of school, still wearing her plaid skirt and navy blue sweater vest, the same one that always made her feel a little older than she was. Her braids were neat, her sneakers clean, and her head high. Tucked tight under her arm was a small white envelope with $90 inside. Birthday money, babysitting tips, and a few bucks she made dog walking for neighbors. She'd been saving for months, and this was her first time depositing cash by herself. Her mom had told her, if you're old enough to earn it, you're old enough to manage it. So here she was, standing in line at Midstate Community Bank, right on the corner of High and Spring Street. The bank was quiet in that boring way most banks are. A man in a suit was filling out a form at one of those high tables near the entrance. An older woman chatted softly on her phone by the window. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. It smelled like paper and printer ink. When Jasmine reached the front, she stepped up with her usual mix of nerves and excitement. She smiled and said, "Hi, I'd like to make a deposit." That's when she met Linda Cartwright. Gray cardigan, name tag, short haircut, probably in her 50s. She had that tight face people get when they've worked too many years with the public and don't enjoy it anymore. Cartwright didn't smile back. She looked up from her screen slowly and blinked at Jasmine, like she was trying to figure out why she was even standing there. "Yes," she said flatly. Jasmine held out her envelope. "I want to put this in my savings. I already have an account. My mom opened it for me." Cartwright didn't take the envelope. She tilted her head slightly, then gave Jasmine a once-over, starting with her hair, her clothes, down to her shoes. "And where are your parents?" Jasmine blinked. "My mom's at work. She knows I'm here." There was a pause, an awkward kind. Then Cartwright reached for the envelope, slow, like she didn't trust it. "And where exactly did you get this money?" Jasmine's stomach tensed, but her voice stayed steady. "It's mine. Some was for my birthday, and I do chores sometimes for my neighbors." Cartwright's eyebrows went up, like she'd caught her in a lie. She opened the envelope and counted the money right there on the counter. $90, not hundreds, not even 100, but the way she looked at that cash, like it was suspicious, like Jasmine had brought in stolen bills from a crime scene. It made something twist in the air. "I'm going to need to see an ID," Cartwright said suddenly. "I don't have one," Jasmine answered, "but the account has my name. It's under Jasmine Carter. My mom set it up. I've deposited before." Cartwright sighed and tapped something into her keyboard. "Without ID, I can't verify anything. You could be anyone walking in here, but I have my account number right here," Jasmine said, reaching into her backpack and pulling out a small notepad where her mom had written it down for her. "It's mine." Cartwright didn't even look at it. She was already waving someone over. A man in a dark vest, with a shaved head, started walking from the back office. He looked like someone who'd rather be at lunch. Jasmine's fingers tightened around her envelope. Her shoulders were still straight, but her heart was thudding in her ears. She could feel the stares now, from the guy at the table, from the woman by the window. Her hands felt too big. Her voice felt too small. But that was just the beginning. The man in the vest stepped up beside Cartwright and gave Jasmine a once-over. He wasn't angry, just detached, like this was some routine matter. "This the young lady?" he asked. "Yep," Cartwright replied without looking at Jasmine. "Came in trying to deposit cash. No ID, claims it's her account. Something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right." Jasmine couldn't believe what she was hearing. She opened her mouth to speak, but the man cut her off. "Okay, let's just take a look." He turned to her. "What's your name?" "Jasmine Carter." He typed into the computer Cartwright had just used. A pause, then a nod. "Okay, there is an account under that name. Opened last year. Looks like it's a custodial account under Danielle Carter." "That's my mom," Jasmine said quickly. "She works right down the street." "Mum," Cartwright muttered. She was still staring at the envelope like it might explode. "Still doesn't explain the cash." Jasmine's hands were shaking now, but she gripped the strap of her backpack like it would hold her together. "I already told you. It's from my birthday. And I do dog walking and babysitting sometimes, just around the neighborhood. I've brought money before. No one had a problem then." Cartwright leaned in a little, her tone dropping, like she was talking to someone caught in a lie. "Honey, do you understand how serious it is to bring in money you can't prove belongs to you?" Jasmine's mouth dropped open slightly. "But it does belong to me." The man sighed. "Do you have your mom's number? Maybe we should give her a quick call to confirm." Jasmine hesitated. She had her mom's number saved, of course, but something about this didn't sit right. She wasn't being helped. She was being handled. She slowly reached into her backpack and took out her phone. "I'll text her," she said quietly. Cartwright crossed her arms. "We'll need to speak to her ourselves, not through you." Jasmine ignored her and typed fast, her thumbs hitting the screen harder than usual. "Mom, I need you to come to the bank. They won't let me deposit the money. They think I did something wrong. Please." Her heart was racing now. Her ears burned with shame. The man had taken the envelope and was holding it in one hand, like it was evidence. Cartwright whispered something to him, and they both looked at her. She couldn't hear what was said, but she saw the way they glanced at each other, and then at her, like she wasn't a kid anymore, like she was a problem. She looked around. No one said anything. No one stepped in. But she saw them watching. The man in the suit was frowning. The older woman on her phone had stopped talking. Jasmine felt like she was standing in the middle of a courtroom, not a bank. She was 14. She had done nothing wrong. But somehow just existing here made her guilty. She wanted to scream. But she'd learned something early from her mom. If you raise your voice, they'll only hear the noise, not the truth. So she stayed quiet. She waited. Her phone buzzed. "On my way. Don't say anything else." Cartwright glanced at the phone and smirked. "Did she text you back?" Jasmine nodded, saying nothing. "She's coming?" the man asked. "Yes." Her voice was flat now. Cartwright leaned against the counter, like she was settling in for a show. "All right. We'll wait." Jasmine didn't speak. She stared at the glass door, willing it to open. She imagined her mom walking through in her power heels, that calm, tight look on her face she wore when things needed fixing. She thought about how she always told her, "People will doubt you before they even see you. That's not your fault. That's theirs." But that didn't make it hurt any less. And soon, the door would open. But when it did, nobody was ready for what walked through it. The clock on the wall said 3:43 p.m. To Jasmine, it felt like it had been an hour. The man, his name tag read Josh L., had returned to the back office with her envelope. Cartwright remained at her station, arms folded, chewing the inside of her cheek, like she had better things to do than wait on a little black girl who didn't follow procedure. Jasmine stood by the counter, hands at her sides, staring straight ahead. She didn't blink much, didn't fidget, just waited, like her mom told her. They already think you'll break, so don't give them the satisfaction. Josh returned a few minutes later, but now he had company. A woman in a navy blue blazer, slightly younger than Cartwright, walked beside him. Her ID badge read, Angela Dorsey, branch manager. She looked composed but curious, like she hadn't gotten the full story yet. Cartwright jumped in immediately. This is the girl I told you about. Tried to deposit cash without ID. Account's real, but it's under her mom's name. No documents, no parent present. The cash just showed up, and the girl says it's from babysitting and birthdays. Angela looked at Jasmine, her eyes narrowing just a bit. Not out of suspicion, but more like she was trying to do the math in her head. Jasmine didn't wait to be asked. My name is Jasmine Carter. My mom is Danielle Carter. She opened my account here. She's coming now. They wouldn't let me deposit the money. It's only $90. Angela blinked. 90? Yeah. Josh shifted. It's not really about the amount, he said. It's about the process. No ID, no confirmation. Angela held up a hand to pause him. Then she turned to Cartwright. Did the system flag anything? No, Cartwright said. But come on, Angela. Does this look right to you? A kid walks in with a wad of cash and no adult. Angela didn't answer. She studied Jasmine a moment longer, then said calmly, Can I see the envelope? Josh handed it over. Angela opened it, glanced inside. She flipped through the bills. Ones, tens, fives, a few singles. It looked exactly like birthday money and tip cash. No big bills, nothing out of place. Angela closed the envelope and placed it gently on the counter. And you've deposited here before? Jasmine nodded. With my mom once. By myself. They helped me last time. I had the account number. I always have it with me. Angela looked at Cartwright. Did she give you the number? Cartwright looked uncomfortable now. She said she had it, but we didn't get that far. I called you first. Angela sighed. Just the smallest shift in her expression, but it said enough. Jasmine's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. Outside. Don't say anything. I got it. And just like that, the atmosphere inside the bank flipped. The glass doors opened with a hiss, and in walked Danielle Carter. Black heels clicking sharp against the floor. Navy pantsuit tailored like it was made just for her. Curls pinned into a high bun. Phone still in her hand. People turned. The man at the table stopped writing. The woman by the window adjusted her seat to get a better view. Cartwright didn't know who she was yet, but Angela did. Her posture straightened. Ms. Carter. Danielle raised a single hand as she approached, slow and deliberate, eyes only on her daughter. You okay? She asked, her voice calm but charged. Jasmine gave the tiniest nod, but her eyes were glossy. She didn't trust her voice. Danielle turned to the three adults behind the counter. Her eyes moved from Angela to Josh, then landed on Cartwright. Someone want to explain to me why my daughter just texted me in tears. Angela opened her mouth, but Danielle didn't give her the floor yet. She kept her voice even. Controlled. $90. That's what we're talking about, correct? Angela nodded slowly. Danielle looked at Cartwright. And you believe that was suspicious? Cartwright's lips parted, but nothing came out. Danielle said quietly. Interesting. And what she said next would shift the entire room. But it was how she said it that would leave everyone stunned. Danielle Carter didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam her hand on the counter. She didn't need to. She stood with one hand in her pocket, the other resting lightly on the edge of the desk. That quiet, unbothered stillness of someone used to commanding boardrooms and correcting people without breaking a sweat. Cartwright finally found her voice. Ma'am, with all due respect, your daughter came in unaccompanied, and attempted a deposit with no identification. We followed protocol. Danielle turned to Angela. "Is that true?" Angela hesitated. There was a concern about verifying the funds, but Danielle cut in, still calm. "Angela, right. Yes. I'm familiar with you. I've seen you at the Chamber of Commerce events." Angela nodded slowly. "I've deposited here. My assistant uses this branch regularly. My daughter has deposited here before. This is not her first time in this building." "So what exactly changed today?" Cartwright stepped in again. "She was alone. She's a child," Danielle said, still not looking at her. "She's 14. And she had an account number, a deposit, and a name that matches the account. What more would you have asked if her skin looked different?" Cartwright's face flushed. "That's not fair." Danielle finally turned to face her directly. "You're right. It's not fair. But it is real." Josh stepped forward, trying to mediate. "Look, it's not personal. We have rules. We're just trying to protect customers from potential fraud. We didn't know who she was." Danielle stared at him for a beat, then tilted her head. "She told you her name. You confirmed the account. You counted $90. You had no red flags in the system. So tell me, what fraud are we protecting her from?" No one answered. Danielle took out her business card and laid it flat on the counter. "Danielle Carter, CEO of Mobimun Technologies, headquartered 6 blocks from here, one of the fastest-growing firms in the city. You've probably seen the billboards." Cartwright's eyes widened. The name clicked. Danielle looked at Angela. "When a child like my daughter walks into your bank and is treated like a threat, that tells me one thing. You see her skin before you see her value. You saw a little girl with braids and assumed her cash was suspicious. $90. She paused. You know how many times she cleaned up after someone's pet for that money? How many Saturdays she gave up? That money wasn't just cash, it was her effort. And you reduced her to a risk." Angela swallowed hard. "Carter, I apologize. I truly do. I wasn't here for the initial interaction, but you're the manager," Danielle said. "So the culture here, the way she was treated, that's yours to answer for." Silence. No more tapping keyboards. No more side-eye glances from across the room. Everyone was watching now. Everyone felt it. Jasmine stood a little taller next to her mother. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Danielle looked at her daughter. "You did everything right." Then she turned back to the counter. "And she deserves to be treated like she belongs here, because she does." Angela nodded slowly. "Would you allow us to correct this? I'll personally help her with the deposit now." Danielle gave a slight nod. "Good. And I'll be moving all 3 of our accounts to a different bank tomorrow." Angela looked like she wanted to speak again, but knew better. Cartwright kept her mouth shut. Josh quietly returned the envelope to Jasmine and gestured toward a new counter. But the room didn't move the same after that. People were whispering now, not because Danielle made a scene, but because she didn't. She didn't need to shout to be heard. And somehow, the silence she left behind said more than any speech could. Angela escorted Jasmine to a different window, trying to mask the tension with polite small talk. "Let's get you taken care of, sweetheart." Jasmine didn't smile. She wasn't being rude. She was just tired. Tired of pretending she didn't hear the tone, the assumptions, the doubt. Tired of being polite when people weren't. She slid the envelope across the counter and handed over the small notepad with her account number written in her mother's handwriting. Angela processed the deposit with fast, nervous clicks on her keyboard. "There we go. All set. You've got $90 added to your account." Jasmine nodded once, took the receipt, and walked back to her mother without a word. Danielle turned to go, but Cartwright, clearly shaken but still holding on to something, spoke up. "Look, I was just doing my job. I would have questioned any kid who came in alone with cash." Danielle turned slowly, took one step forward, and looked Cartwright in the eyes. Say that again, she said slowly. Cartwright's mouth tightened. I said I would have done the same for any child. Danielle held her gaze. No, you wouldn't have. Cartwright tried to hold her ground. You can't prove that. I don't have to, Danielle replied, because you already did. Cartwright's face twitched. She looked around, suddenly very aware of the eyes on her. Her coworkers, customers, strangers who were now witnesses. Danielle leaned forward just slightly. Do you know how many times I've heard that excuse? I treat everyone the same. But somehow, we're always the ones getting treated like this. First to be doubted. First to be questioned. First to be watched. Cartwright said nothing. You didn't ask for ID because of the deposit. You asked because of the person. And you thought, she's just a kid. What's she going to do about it? But you didn't plan for the mother who was going to walk through that door. Jasmine stood beside her, silent, strong, watching, learning. Josh cleared his throat behind the counter. Ms. Carter, we understand this has been a situation, and we'll be filing a report. Danielle didn't even turn to him. That's your choice. Mine was to come here in person and show my daughter what it looks like to defend yourself without losing your dignity. She looked around the room, speaking loud enough now for everyone to hear. If this is what protocol looks like, then the protocol is broken. Because there's nothing normal about embarrassing a child for trying to save money she earned. Angela looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Cartwright looked smaller now, less sure. And that was the point. Not to destroy them, but to make them see, to feel what they so casually passed on to a child. Danielle turned to Jasmine. You ready, baby? Jasmine nodded. Her shoulders had dropped back into place. As they walked out, the woman by the window, who had been watching the whole time, stood up and approached the manager quietly. I just wanted to say, she said, that mother handled that better than I would have. Angela gave her a stiff smile. We'll be reviewing how this was handled. The woman gave a short nod and left. Outside, Danielle and Jasmine stepped into the sun. It was the same as when she arrived, but something felt different now. Jasmine looked up. Were you mad? Danielle glanced down. Not mad, just tired. And tired means I don't let things slide anymore. They walked down the street together, hand in hand. You didn't yell, Jasmine said. Danielle smiled. Didn't need to. People hear truth better when it's calm, and they feel it longer. Jasmine was quiet for a moment. Can I still come here by myself? Danielle looked ahead. You can do anything you want. But now you know, just because someone's behind a counter doesn't mean they're always right. You have a voice. Use it, because silence keeps you safe, but truth makes you seen. The branch manager sat in her office, the door closed but the atmosphere heavy. Angela had barely slept. Not because of a formal complaint. There wasn't one. Danielle Carter hadn't filed anything. No media. No legal threats. Just a card left on the counter. And a room full of witnesses who would remember everything. That's what made it worse. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was true. And truth spoken quietly has a way of echoing long after people leave the room. At her desk, Angela opened an email marked Account Transfer Request. 3 accounts. Personal, custodial, business, all with the Carter name. All gone, across town. Danielle and Jasmine were sitting together at a different bank. One with tellers who smiled without scanning. One where Jasmine's account was updated in minutes. No lectures, no suspicions, no side eyes. As they walked out, Jasmine asked, Why'd you take your business somewhere else instead of reporting them? Danielle looked at her. Because I don't know anyone the burden of educating them. That's not our job every time. Sometimes, the loudest message is where you decide to put your time, your energy, your money. Jasmine nodded slowly, letting it sink in. Danielle continued. People think respect is earned. But for us, it's often denied until we prove we deserve it. I'm not waiting for someone to catch up. Respect is non-negotiable. They reached the car. Jasmine looked at her mom with a different kind of admiration, not the kind that comes from titles or paychecks, but from clarity, from knowing who you are and refusing to shrink. Cartwright clocked in, still tight-lipped, but quieter now. Her co-workers avoided eye contact, not because they blamed her, but because they knew. They'd seen it too. They just didn't say anything. That silence was its own kind of guilt. That day, 3 other customers closed their accounts. No speeches, no headlines, just choices. Choices that said, "We saw what happened, and we care who you treat like they don't belong." Jasmine sat at her desk, counting the few dollars she'd earned helping an elderly neighbor with groceries. She tucked them into an envelope, then paused and pulled out a Sharpie. She wrote in big letters, "Fall for D people SIT only. J has mine Carter." And underneath, EARNED. Legit. Deserves respect. She smiled to herself, slipped it into her backpack, then zipped it tight. Because next time, she wouldn't be coming in unsure. She'd be walking in ready. There are a lot of Jasmines out there, kids who do everything right, and still get treated like they don't belong. This story isn't just about a bank. It's about how easy it is for grown people to forget what bias looks like when it wears a smile and a name tag. If you're watching this, and you work with the public, especially kids, remember, how you treat someone when no one's watching says more about you than any company policy ever could. Check your assumptions, listen before judging, and don't make respect conditional. If this story hits something real for you, share it, because silence won't change anything. But truth, when spoken out loud, just might.